Today's my birthday. Hurry back home and get ready to celebrate. My mother-in-law, Barbara, has a habit of calling at the most inappropriate times, and today is no exception. Unfortunately, today is the funeral of my own mother. Despite having informed her about the funeral in advance, Barbara kept calling repeatedly, making me think it must be something urgent, so I decided to answer. I was in a situation where I couldn't step away, so I answered on speakerphone, and her voice ended up echoing throughout the venue. Hearing this, my father, John, started trembling, and things began to spiral out of control from there. My name is Naomi, and I turned 43 this year. I've been with my husband, Alex, since our student days, and we've been married for 17 years after tying the knot at 26. Alex is usually quite reserved and doesn't talk much, so sometimes I find it hard to know what he's thinking. But I can clearly feel that he cares about me a lot. I can say this because whenever I was harassed by Barbara, Alex always stood by my side. Barbara is a difficult person, and even my parents opposed our marriage because of her. Especially my mother, she repeatedly told me, marriage isn't just about love, it involves the whole family. I'm worried that you might end up suffering in the future. In fact, I have been receiving various forms of harassment from Barbara. In the end, I didn't listen to my mother's advice and married Alex, but there were times when I found it hard to bear Barbara's harassment. Every time I consulted Alex about it, he would speak to Barbara, but then she started mumbling under her breath when no one else was around. When I couldn't take it anymore and consulted my mother about Barbara, she would always reassure me, saying, "It's okay. You have me and Alex, don't you?" And then, the other day, my dear mother passed away. I loved her so much, so when I heard the news of her passing, I was truly shocked. I became unable to do anything for myself, couldn't swallow any food, and couldn't sleep at night. Alex took care of me while handling the household chores, and he even took time off work to handle the funeral arrangements. On the day of my mother's funeral, he took a day off to help my father, Michael, and me. 2 days after her passing, the funeral was held, and we were busy finding a funeral director and deciding who to invite. But even during this time, Barbara kept harassing me. In the midst of searching for a funeral director, she would call relentlessly, saying things like, "I want to go shopping now, can you come with me? I also need to buy rice, so I need a car." She was completely disregarding my situation. I told her I couldn't do it, but she wouldn't listen, so I ended up going shopping with her just once. Of course, Barbara knew about my mother's death. She has experienced the death of her own parents and knows how hard it is, yet she still did this to me, making me dislike her even more. Alex always takes my side, but Barbara seems to be discontent with that as well. After being pointed out by Alex, Barbara called me and said, "Your child has grown up like this, it must be the parents' fault," and then she hung up without listening to anything I had to say. My mother raised me with love, and sometimes with strictness. I am proud of her, and I have never once spoken ill of her or behaved in a way that would disparage her. I know I need to do something about Barbara, but before I could figure it out, the day of my mother's funeral arrived. It was the last day I could see my mother, so I wanted to give her a grand farewell. I did ask Barbara if she was going to attend, but it seems she didn't want to. To be honest, I didn't want her to come either, so it worked out for me. Barbara didn't even send a condolence telegram, let alone give a condolence money. I already knew she was that kind of person, so it didn't really bother me, but it was indeed very Barbara-like. "I'm really sorry. I know she's my mother, but I'm truly embarrassed. She wasn't like this before, but she became selfish after my father passed away," Alex apologized. "Yeah, I'm fine. But I would prefer to keep my distance from her as much as possible," I replied. I've told Alex my feelings many times, but for some reason, Barbara keeps trying to reach out to me. It's a very tiring situation, but Alex, being stuck in the middle, must be having an even harder time. At my mother's funeral, the attendees included me, Alex, my father, my mother's relatives, and Alex's father, James. James seems to not get along well with Barbara, as they are already divorced. However, they both get along well with me and Alex. Barbara has always had a bad attitude, you know. If you ask me why I married her, well, I can only say that it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. He would talk like this every time we met. This time, when I told him over the phone that my mother had passed away, he responded, "I'm sorry for your loss. I've only met your mom a few times, but she was a really wonderful person. Of course, I'll attend the funeral. On the day of the funeral, as the attendees gathered, the service began. I made sure my smartphone wouldn't make any notification sounds during the funeral. But I left the vibration function on just in case something urgent came up and I needed to respond quickly. A while after the funeral started, my phone, which was in my bag, began to vibrate. It only vibrated once, so I didn't worry about it, but then it vibrated several more times. Thinking it might be something urgent, I stood up to check my phone, and there was Barbara's name on the screen. Although I didn't want to, I decided to answer the phone just in case it was something important. Hello? What's up? What's up? You took forever to answer. How many times do you think I called you? I'm in the middle of my mother's funeral right now. If it's not urgent, can you please call me back later? What? You're giving me attitude now? Do you even remember what day it is today? Today is the day of my mother's funeral. I couldn't think of anything else, so I answered honestly. Today is my birthday. Did you forget? Come back home quickly and prepare for the celebration. I was so surprised by what she said that I accidentally dropped my phone. I picked up the phone and confirmed again, but it was indeed a call from Barbara telling me to celebrate her birthday. So, I'm currently at my mother's funeral. I will definitely prepare for the celebration after it's over, so please wait for me. I was astounded by Barbara's words, and after telling her that, I hung up and returned to the funeral. What happened? Is there some trouble? Alex asked me, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I told him it was nothing. Throughout the meal and cremation, Barbara kept calling me, but I decided to ignore all her calls. It was probably just her telling me to come back quickly, and I could deal with that after the funeral. However, I hadn't thought about celebrating Barbara's birthday at all. After all the mean things she had done to me, expecting me to celebrate her birthday now seemed incredibly audacious. And then, just as the funeral was about to end, something in my bag accidentally pressed against my phone's screen, and I answered Barbara's call, which was, for some reason, on speakerphone. The next moment, despite being in the middle of my mother's funeral, Barbara's voice echoed throughout the venue. When are you coming back? Today is my birthday. Hurry up and come back to prepare for the celebration. Her voice was so loud that everyone turned to look at me. Realizing this was bad, I tried to hang up, but my father, Michael, who was nearby, asked me, "What's going on? Was that Barbara?" I couldn't lie, so I explained everything that had just happened to my father. Then, he clenched his fist until his knuckles turned white and started to tremble. My father is usually a calm person, but when he gets angry, he is terrifyingly scary. Moreover, he has a personality that drives people into a corner until they hit rock bottom, so no one can go against him. However, what he says is always right. And right now, my father is incredibly angry right before my eyes. Give me your phone. Without allowing me to say anything, my father snatched my phone from my hand. Meanwhile, Barbara was still shouting something over the phone, but as soon as she heard his voice, she suddenly became silent. Hello, this is Naomi's father, Michael. May I ask if this is Barbara? Oh, Michael, are you? It's been a while. You were shouting quite loudly just now, but it's your birthday today, isn't it? Happy birthday. By the way, do you know what day it is today? I timidly looked at my father's face as he spoke, and while there was a smile on his face, his eyes were not smiling. This is the expression he has when he is truly angry. I have hardly ever seen my father angry. But there was one time I witnessed him getting angry. It was when a man bumped into my mother on the street for no reason. Instead of apologizing, the man started berating my mother. My father, who walks fast, was a few meters ahead of my mother, but he noticed and came back. Do you need something from my wife? He asked, placing his hand on the man's shoulder. The man turned around, froze, and then ran away. That's true, my dad is about 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighs around 200 pounds. He has a shaved head, so he looks intimidating to anyone who sees him. A man who was acting boldly just a moment ago ran away without saying anything as soon as he saw my dad. Of course, Barbara has met my dad before, so she generally knows what he's like. During the meeting of both families, Barbara was using words to belittle me, so my dad confronted her, saying, "Does that mean you think my daughter is a failure? I don't understand. How could someone like you give birth to a wonderful man like Alex? I can't figure it out no matter how many times I think about it. That made the atmosphere turn sour instantly. While my dad is always a strong ally by my side, it seems he can be a bit too honest at times. We're in the middle of a funeral, right? I know that because you told me earlier. The living are more important than the deceased. Just go and buy some steak or something for the birthday celebration. Since he was on speakerphone, Barbara's voice was resounding throughout the venue. Everyone was watching nervously to see what my dad would say next, but contrary to expectations, he said, "Understood. The funeral will be over soon, so I'll tell Naomi to head straight there." I was so surprised that he would say something like that, I couldn't help but blurt out, "Wait a minute, Dad, I'm not going, okay?" My dad put his index finger to his lips and silently gestured for me to be quiet. Maybe he has some kind of plan. I don't understand what he's thinking, so first I decide to wait for the phone call to end. But even after the call ended, my dad didn't say anything, and we had to resume the funeral. The continuation of the funeral took place, and it finally ended around 5 p.m. "Hey, Dad, I really don't want to celebrate her birthday." "Don't worry, I have a proper plan." "Naomi, you just need to drive. Can we stop by my house before heading to the supermarket?" I'm feeling uneasy not knowing what my dad is thinking. But so far, he has never been wrong. I have absolute trust in him, even though I'm not convinced. So I decide to follow his instructions. Since Alex had taken time off work, he went back to work right after the funeral and didn't come with us to Barbara's house. When we arrived at the supermarket, my dad bought a cake and steaks, and then he returned to the car with a large envelope from the house. "The funeral for Mom just ended, and I'm really sorry to ask this of you. Could we go to Barbara's house next?" Judging from the cake and steak in my dad's hands, it seems he intends to celebrate Barbara's birthday. I've told him I don't want to do this, so why is he trying to accommodate Barbara's request? The uneasiness doesn't clear away, but we've come this far, and there's no turning back now. I grip the steering wheel tightly and drive towards Barbara's house. "Dad, are you really planning to celebrate her birthday?" "Yeah, that's the plan. But at the same time, I intend to give Barbara a piece of my mind," he replied. It seems he has something in mind, after all. When I ask him what he's thinking, he just says, "You'll see when we get there. It'll be clear once we arrive," and doesn't give me a straight answer. So I decide not to ask anything more until we reach Barbara's house. It takes about an hour to drive from the funeral to Barbara's house. When we arrive, my dad takes the cake, steaks, and the large envelope and rings the doorbell. Barbara shows up at the front door right away, surprised to see my dad. "Oh, so you came too, Michael?" "Yes, I heard it's Barbara's birthday." "It's not much, but I brought some food and a gift." "May I come in?" Barbara was hesitant at first, seeing my dad eager to enter the house. But as soon as she realized she was getting a feast and a gift, she let us in without any hesitation. "Was it really okay for you to prepare a feast and a gift for me?" Barbara's tone changed completely when she realized we were there to celebrate her birthday, and she started speaking in a sweet voice. I grilled the steaks and arranged them on the dining table along with the cake. Wow, the steaks and the cake look delicious. "Shall we eat?" "Before we eat, please wait a moment." My dad interrupted just as Barbara was about to dig in with her knife and fork. I was curious to know what he was about to say, but Barbara was visibly frustrated, having to wait with a hot steak right in front of her. "What is it?" "Hurry up, or the steak will get cold." "This won't take long." "Here's your present," my dad said, handing her the envelope. "What's this?" she asked, looking puzzled. "It's a land title deed," he replied. For a moment, Barbara seemed to not understand what was going on, but upon checking the contents of the envelope, she froze. Barbara lived in a single-family home, but in fact, the land was owned by her father. Her father had inherited several pieces of land over the generations, and he was renting them out to friends and relatives. Barbara was one of those people, and when it was decided that I would marry Alex, it was decided that the land would be rented to her. At that time, James was also living with us, so we decided to build a single-family house, and my father was covering the expenses. Several years later, Barbara divorced James and lived alone in this house, but the owner was still my father. "What is this? What does this mean?" "No, I thought you might have forgotten, but I just wanted to remind you that I own this land and house. You've been living here out of my goodwill, but I've decided to reconsider everything due to recent events. According to my father, he had decided to stop renting the house to Barbara. He figured she couldn't leave right away, so he was going to give her 1 week. 1 week? There's no way I can leave in such a short time. And just try to make me leave, I won't go, I guarantee it. Is that so? Well, I have other plans in mind. What are you going to do? Honestly, I had no idea what my father was thinking. I was surprised enough that my usually gentle father was this angry and telling her to leave, but now I was wondering what he would do next. As I thought this, my father started making a call to someone. Judging from the conversation, it seemed like he was talking to a lawyer. It appeared my father was trying to forcibly evict Barbara from the house. Hey, wait a minute. Are you really trying to kick me out just because of that? It's just a funeral, right? It wasn't a big deal when you guys left halfway through. Hearing this, my father trembled with rage. I think Alex and James are really good people, but I can't forgive you. I said earlier I'd wait a week, but I want you to leave right now. I will report you for trespassing, he declared sternly. What you've done until now is truly unforgivable. That's why I agree with my father's opinion, I added. Trespassing? I live here, you know? Don't you get it yet? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that you've been living off of us. Barbara tried to argue back, but being someone who always cares about what others think, she might have thought it would be bad to actually get reported. So she left the house with only the bare minimum of her belongings. After that, Barbara went to a friend's house, but she was turned away. She is known for saying unpleasant things to friends and neighbors, so no one probably wanted to take her in. Unable to be accepted by anyone, Barbara reluctantly decided to go to her sister's house. Jessica, who is Barbara's older sister, does have a stronger personality than Barbara, but she has always been incredibly kind to me. Naomi, I know it's been tough for you as well. I've lived with Barbara since we were little, so I know what she's like. She gets angry when things don't go her way, and she always tries to assert her dominance, doesn't she? If you ever run into any trouble, don't hesitate to tell me, okay? She was always considerate of my feelings and made an effort to keep in touch, informing me via phone whenever Barbara visited her place and giving me updates on how Barbara was doing. Barbara, despite her complaints about me and our father, would be in trouble if she lost her place to live. It seems like she's desperately trying to mend her relationship with Jessica, though all of their conversations are transparent to us. And then Jessica told me, Naomi, you and your father probably don't want anything to do with Barbara anymore, right? Don't worry about it. We'll take care of everything from here on. We'll let you know if there's any progress. Barbara is a scattered person, so it's impossible she has any savings, and even if she receives a pension, she ends up spending it all. Moreover, since she has no one else to rely on, it seems she eventually ended up living with Jessica. Since Jessica lives on the same property as her sons, even though it's just the two elderly women living together, someone could come to their aid if anything happens. Thinking this would give us peace of mind to finally get Barbara out of the house, we decided to send Barbara's belongings to Jessica's place and put the house up for sale right away. The property is located in a pretty prime location, so it sold quickly, and we were finally able to get Barbara out of the house for good. However, Barbara sometimes calls me. Come pick me up quickly. I hate living with my sister. She makes me do everything, and she's always making snide remarks. If you feel sorry for me, help me out. It sounds like you're going through exactly what I went through with you before. You used to do the same things to me, Barbara. I'm not going through that again, and Alex agrees with me. After saying that, I hung up the phone, and I have since ignored all calls from Barbara. And since then, I've been living happily with Alex. I did propose to my father to live with us, but he declined, saying, I'm still perfectly capable of living on my own. Plus, I've got enough funds set aside for my retirement, so if I can't live by myself anymore, I'll just move into a facility. Although Alex was supportive of my father living with us, we couldn't force him since he was so against the idea. In the end, nothing changed, and I continue to live with just Alex. But there has been one change since then. Alex has started to open up more about his feelings and thoughts. After the whole incident with Barbara, I went through a period of emotional instability. I couldn't cook, and stress-induced insomnia made it hard for me to concentrate. That's when a doctor told me something. Naomi, you must have been under a lot of stress. I can tell you've been holding a lot in. Right now, Alex's support is crucial, so he needs to make an effort not to worry you. Ever since that day, Alex has been talking to me more. I feel like eating omelet today. I'll go to the supermarket, so can you make it? He would make food requests, and sometimes he'd say, we haven't been going out much lately. How about we go for a drive for a change of scenery? And he'd take me to a beach a couple of hours away by car. I can really feel that he's making an effort to think about me and what I need. Even though he's not great at expressing his feelings, I truly appreciate his attempts to show his love for me. It's probably all thanks to the incident with Barbara. As terrible as that experience was, ranking among the top 3 worst times of my life, it ultimately helped me move towards a happier life. I like to think that a higher power has been watching over me, rewarding my past deeds with happiness now. Just like before, I want to live a life that I can be proud of, without feeling ashamed in front of anyone.